All right. Hi, Andrew. Thank you again for joining us and welcome back to our channel.
Joe, James, welcome back. I'm super happy to be back.
Since our last interview, you inspired us to reserve two Ford Mavericks and two Fisker pairs. We're very excited to be adding the Ford Mavericks to the platform in late 2023 and the Fiskers in 2024. We opened a business checking account, got a business credit card, and also upgraded to YouTube Premium, all thanks to you.
You're welcome, YouTube.
We're recording this mid-December, so let's talk about end of year decisions. What should a host be doing to close out the year?
It's a good question. It's a great question. I like that. Basically, I have a video coming where I'm going to give a more in-depth breakdown. So if you want me to go into that, I'm hoping to get it out in the next week or two. But December, I really like to focus on, analyzing the year, the income for the year, analyzing your fleet. So basically, if you're not a person that's updating your numbers every month, it's a good time at the end of the year to kind of get everything caught up so you can really, evaluate which cars are actually productive and not just in financially, rental income, but also in what your expenses are. And, you may purchase a vehicle that rents really well, but you end up adding the tires are more money or the service is more money or there's more mechanical issues. And so you can really evaluate the whole year on what cars are actually productive, actually making profit, making money, as opposed to other ones that are kind of just treading water. And so it can allow you decide to at the end of the year decide what vehicles you want to get rid of or what vehicles you need to purchase for the new coming year. If you got a vehicle that's really one of the best ones in your fleet, and you may want to add a second vehicle as far as that goes. But December is a great time to analyze and evaluate all that information because there's certain times where you may want to sell vehicles. And even for 2022, if there's vehicles you need to get rid of, December is a good time to sell vehicles because dealerships are always going to have a big push at the end of the year. When they go into that week between Christmas and New Year's Day, is one of the busiest sales week in automotive sales of the entire year. So there's a lot of buzz. The dealerships are trying to close out their year. They may have a certain amount of vehicles they need to sell. And so they want inventory right then. So they may step up a little bit on a vehicle that you want to buy. And when dealers are stepping up retail wise, then that means private party people will step up some too if they want to try to buy, even if you have cheaper cars, if they want to try to buy a car to surprise their son or their daughter, maybe it's their first car and they, and you need to sell a car $5, $6, $7, $8,000. It's a great time to sell. Once you go into January and February, it's going to be much more difficult to sell a car during that time of the year. So December is great for that. Also, you want to evaluate, is there any changes that are going to make certain vehicles more expensive or less expensive the following year? So this year we have the big, EV changes. So the EV bill is going into effect January 1st. So I'm looking at a lot of different things of, is there any vehicles that their values are going to change immediately starting January 1st? And, that may be a vehicle I want to target and buy because you can get a good deal the last few weeks of December, especially. Dealerships are wanting to deal. They'll negotiate. And then you have other people that maybe even on the private party market, if you have people that are trying to sell vehicles to get some extra cash for Christmas and holidays, you can sometimes negotiate a really great deal. So now, for most hosts, I am definitely not strongly recommending the majority of the hosts to be going on a buying, splurge. But there are certain areas that the market is still good. It's not oversaturated. If you need to add vehicles or get rid of vehicles, December is a great time to do that.
Just recently, you helped us with some tax questions that we had. So, as we move to the end of the year and then tax season really being upon us again, is there any advice that you can give viewers about taxes for 2022?
Well, tax is tricky because everybody has their own individual situation. So I don't. If you watch my channel a lot, you'll notice I don't really give specific tax information because tax advice is kind of one of those tricky things that varies from state to state to state. But picking up from where we left off on the last question, once you've analyzed your fleet and your inventory and so forth, depending on how much money you make, not only in the Turo business but also in your own personal job. If you have a personal job, the more money that you make, then it's going to be more beneficial for you to purchase newer, more expensive cars because you can use those cars for tax write-offs. So, if you make, let's say, $100,000, there may be a certain amount of vehicles you may want to buy, two vehicles or so. If you make $250,000, or if you're a small business owner and you have a lot of income coming through your business, then you may be more. It may be more beneficial for you purchasing 3, 4, 5, 6 cars because the Turo business is outstanding because you're using those vehicles for business purposes. There are a lot of tax benefits writing off the depreciation of the vehicle. You can a good tax person. The best advice is to make sure you're not trying to do your own taxes unless you have a lot of experience in that. Pay somebody. It's $300, $400, $500. You'll get that money back time and time again, multiple folds, to get a good tax professional who understands small business taxes generally. If they're familiar with the Turo business, that's even a bonus. They don't have to be necessarily a Turo expert, although there's several across the country and some of the groups that have people who are very qualified in Turo taxes. But you really need someone who just understands small business taxes, and someone who's not just an HRR professional or someone from a regular tax shop. You need somebody who specializes in small business taxes, who knows how to utilize a lot of tax benefits that a small business would use, and that's basically kind of how the Turo business runs. So don't skimp out on what you're going to pay for your taxes. Try to find a good company or person that really has good expertise for that. That's what I would recommend.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I used a CPA for the first time, even though I was only in business for like 3 months last year. I just couldn't be happier to have used one, because after looking at the tax forms and all the information and all the work that went into it, it was like way too much, something that I'm glad I didn't even attempt to do. So I agree 100% with you on that.
Yeah, it's for your individual taxes, it's easy to do for yourself. You start adding a small business, which is what the Turo business is, the side hustle small business. You really want somebody who can dive a little bit deeper. And depreciating your vehicles is a big part of the Turo tax benefits, especially if you have good income.
Yeah. And as car prices seem to be falling now, what do you think will happen to car prices in 2023?
I like this question. Nobody knows for sure the future, but I feel like I have a good handle on what's happening in the automotive business, as good as anybody else. And what I see happening is there's a lot of people think that the used vehicles are going to completely collapse in pricing. And we're already seeing a lot of downward pressure for used cars values for sure. But the lower end cars, as far as buying, lower end cars, I'm talking about like $8,000 to $10,000, $12,000 range. I don't think you're going to see a lot of drop off in that type of a market, because you got to remember that the used car market is always based on what the new car market is pricing. So if you're buying used cars, you're comparing them to, but that economy cars. When we're going into a recession, and as the economy gets tighter, people will look to, a lot of people may be downsizing to cheaper cars. So cheaper cars, the values are going to stay pretty consistent. It's going to be still challenging to get low price vehicles. The cars in the middle, the cars that are not brand new cars, and the cars that are that are in the middle there, those 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old cars, those are the ones that are going to get hit pretty hard and are continually going down. And so, if you don't specifically need to add a vehicle right now, just watching and waiting, and you'll see some really good deals on those pre-owned, 3 to 6 year vehicles. The price on those will come down quite a bit, and a lot of the new cars prices are going to come down quite a bit. But the more expensive the vehicles are, and we'll probably talk about interest rates a little bit later on, but as interest rates are substantially increasing, the more expensive cars, the higher priced vehicles are going to get hit hardest, as far as the newer vehicles. And so I do anticipate big drops on those type of things. But you need to be thinking about, you need to be thinking about like what cars, if we're going into a recession, what cars are going to people want? Cars that are efficient. It might be electric cars, but it might also be, hybrids and plug-in hybrids and those type of vehicles. I had a really good play in the middle of COVID when everything was shut down. I think I don't know if we talked about that in our last interview, but when gas prices were extremely low, when nobody was moving around, I was buying. I bought a brand new Tesla. I bought a Volt plug-in hybrid electric car. I bought a Prius Prime when nobody really wanted them because nobody was driving anywhere. And all of those vehicles, all three of those vehicles, I still have the Tesla, but all those vehicles I was able to rent for a good period of time and then sell those vehicles for substantially more than I paid for the vehicles. And it was just looking ahead, thinking like, look, nobody's moving right now, but eventually we're going to go back to work and people are going to start driving again. So I can get good deals on cars that people don't want. At that time, everybody was buying big trucks and gas guzzlers when the first shutdowns were because nobody was driving that much. And so you just have to be ahead of the game on that and ahead of where common your customers or consumers are, and a lot of times just thinking ahead. So think into a recession. If we're going into a recession, what type of vehicles are people going to want? And those are the vehicles you want to target and look for good deals on.
And speaking of prices changing, what do you think of the recent debacle with Tesla car values crashing?
Yeah, this is Teslas. The pre-owned Teslas have gotten hit hardest in the used car market right now, and a lot of people are like shocked by this. They're surprised. We've been people for the last 2 or 3 years have been kind of trained that Teslas just never go down in value, and they have a very strong residual value, especially the Model 3 and the Ys. But it's basically a perfect storm. This is not really hard to understand if you think about it. You had a lot of people that they purchased the vehicles and Tesla raised the prices. So you had people trading in cars that they purchased for $5, $6, $7,000 less, and they're getting more after driving it for a year. And so people like that were trading in the vehicles and getting a profit. And then the car market kind of started to collapse. The bubble started popping, and you had a lot of dealers that have overpaid for these cars, and they sat on them for a little while, a month, 2 months. A lot of these Teslas that are on the market have been on the market for a long time, and then immediately the new EV bill was signed, and so Tesla for the first time was going to get potentially a $7,500 tax credit. And so that was just literally the perfect storm for anybody who was going to buy a overpriced pre-owned Teslas. Like, I might just wait. And even if a new Tesla was not on your budget before, when you count a $7,500 tax credit that's coming in January or potentially coming in January, at that time, then a lot of people were just like, well, I'm going to hold out. I'm not buying a used Tesla. And so that's why you have massive amounts of used Teslas out there. People aren't buying them because they want to see how things shake out. In addition to that, of course, the interest rates that are up affect more expensive cars, and Teslas are not inexpensive vehicles. So that has made it a little bit more harder as well. So all of that has affected the Tesla market. And so we'll see how 2023 does for Teslas. It's going to be mostly a lot of used Teslas are going to be hard to sell for the pricing. They're going to still come down even farther, in my opinion.
Well, we're on the EV car tax bill that's coming up in January. How is it that we can benefit from those bills?
Well, the way you can benefit is you need to read a lot of information on it, because that the bill there's a lot of info in the bill. It's not a simple bill. And you need to read through it, not necessarily the bill itself, but some good articles on the bill. There's EV, I think Technica or whatever has a really great breakdown. There's a lot of good places where you can read through and understand it, digest the information, because this is you need to be using this if you're have any type of successful business, productive, profitable business in the Turo business, because you know, you should be able to add that extra anywhere from $4,500 to $7,500 into your profit margin for the year, based on you understanding how the bill is applicable to you. For example, a lot of people don't know that for the first time in, I think, maybe ever, you're going to be able to get a tax credit potentially for a pre-owned electric car. And so that is really going to change the game. I think it's like $3,000 or $4,000. It's not a small tax credit. Now, it's only applicable to people who make a certain amount of money. If you make more than $125,000, it's not going to be applicable to you. The credit is only used once per vehicle. So if you are, if you don't make a lot of money, $200,000 or more, then that's something you want to target. And you want to target that earlier in the year rather than later, because as the year goes on, more people are going to understand about that, and so the prices of vehicles of used electric vehicles are going to kind of spike. So if you think you want to add a lower cost a used electric vehicle, and then I would try to target it in January or February or March, because the longer the year goes on, more people are going to be aware of it, and the costs are you're going to have a lot harder time getting a deal, so to speak. So $4,000 off a used electric vehicle could be a great value. Now there's all caveats for everything. It all depends on how much money you make. As far as the EV credits for new vehicles, the cutoff is like a lot higher, especially if you're married and you file together. It goes up to like almost $300,000, and that's covers a lot more people. Your AGI, your adjusted gross income, needs to be under 300,000. If you do your taxes by yourself, the cutoff is like somewhere in the 175, 200,000 range, something like that, 225 maybe. So you need to read through the information and see how does it apply to you, and then begin right in the beginning of the year deciding what vehicles you want to target, what deals you want to look for. And I never want to box myself on one specific vehicle. I like to have 2 or 3 different vehicles that I'm looking for, and then I can try to get the best deal on whatever is available as far as that goes. And then you get that extra $4,000, $7,500, and that can go right into your that's just extra profit, because if you're making the income through Turo, then you're going to have the tax write-off to use it. Of course, as just like the other EV tax credits, this is not something that if you don't make a lot of money, you're not going to be able to use the EV tax credit, because you have to have the taxable income. You have to be able to pay the taxes in order to get the credit.
Personally, I really like the design of the Hyundai Ioniq 5. Are there any electric vehicles that are worth targeting?
Well, yeah, there's going to be a lot of the Ioniq 5 is a great looking vehicle. There's a lot of different new vehicles coming on the market, so it's something that if you find a vehicle that you really like, it could be a potential vehicle for you. There's as far as the trying to decide which ones, the only warning I would give to people is, the higher end electric vehicles, the more expensive the electric vehicle is, the much more risk you're going to have of high depreciation on the vehicle. You see the model, even the Teslas, the Model S's and the X's depreciate under normal circumstances, pre-COVID and now post-COVID. We had that 2 years of crazy land, right? 2.5 years of crazy land. But under normal circumstances, those higher end vehicles, those are the ones that are going to depreciate more. And you don't want to be in a situation where you have an electric vehicle you thought was a great vehicle, and now it's 20%, 30%, 40% of what you owe. In this Turo business, you have to stay away from vehicles that are going to depreciate rapidly. And electric vehicles are great. I'm a fan of them, but if you understand the history of electric vehicles, they don't, unless they're a Tesla, they don't tend to hold their value well. So I would target vehicles that have higher range. The higher the range, the better the value they'll hold. I would target vehicles that maybe you have a good charging infrastructure is important for your guests. If you don't have a good charging infrastructure in that area, whatever that company uses, like whoever Kia uses for their charging infrastructure, make sure you do your due diligence and find out that it's easy for your customers to charge somewhere, or it's going to be a nightmare renting an electric car on Turo. And so that's the kind of information you want to do. Don't go too crazy on the options. Don't overpay. In fact, I think throughout the year you'll be able to find some good deals on electric cars because a lot of people are where they were all buying them because the gas prices were so high. Now they have to really think about it with the rates and so forth. So just don't overspend on I would say vehicles that are too loaded up with options.
What about electric trucks? Are there any worth trying for Turo?
Yeah, I did a video on the electric trucks a while back, probably 8 months ago, 9 months ago. I think it's a good video for people to watch if you're interested in using electric trucks in your market. The electric trucks are it's even more important. What I just said is that I would target the lower end vehicles. I have a Ford Lightning Pro that I'll be taking delivery shortly after January 1st. I'm hoping to get a EV tax credit on that. And I have a really good price on that vehicle because I ordered it a while back. But Ford Lightning Pro is a very difficult truck to get a hold of. Chevrolet will be coming out. Their Silverado EV. I think their lowest, they're basically work type vehicle. That's the one you want to target. You don't want to target, the electric trucks get expensive really, really fast. And I can guarantee you those vehicles that I was at a Ford dealership this week, and a Ford Lightning Platinum was like $97,000 MSRP. You're seeing that the manufacturers for 2023, especially from 22 to 2023, their MSRPs are going substantially up. They're trying to get that inflation that everybody else has had, and they're trying to get that in their vehicles. You're going to see it across the board. And for the EV trucks, you don't want to be buying an 80, 90, $100,000 EV truck. The depreciation on that vehicle is going to be really, really bad. It's not even going to hold up as far as the values, even comparable to a V8 or a diesel truck, because these vehicles are not, they're not ergonomically designed as far as, aerodynamics as far as that goes. And so therefore, the range is just not going to hold up long term comparatively to what the technology is going to do. The only exception would be the Cybertruck. And so if you can get a Cybertruck, if you can get a Ford Lightning Pro, if you can get the Silverado EV, the lower model, the lower base model, you can jazz it up yourself. You can put some nice rims on it, or or tires or whatever, aesthetically jazz it up a little bit. But you're not going to get much more on the Turo platform for a $80,000-$90,000 truck over a $40,000-$50,000 truck. So you can get your hands on one of those economy ones. Exception might be a Rivian if you have access to an early Rivian before they change their prices. Remember, they made a big like $10,000 to $12,000 increase in their pricing a while back. So if you can get an early allocation for that and you have locked in pricing, that's a truck you might want to consider. That one has the potential to hold its value a little longer because it's a premium brand, but it's going to be tricky. You got Lucid, Rivian, some of these other electric manufacturers. Lucid especially is in trouble right now. I mean, I'm not sure they're going to make it. Rivian, I think, has a better chance of make it. So you want to keep following that as far as before you buy a $70,000-$80,000 truck. You want to know the company is in pretty good standing and is going to continue on, because the last thing you want is a vehicle that the manufacturer goes bankrupt or something like that.
That's a lot of good information, a lot of options to look into. Thank you. So let's shift over to a not so sexy topic. It seems like we were able to stave off a technical recession in 2022, but the way that things are looking, there's a 2023 recession on the horizon. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think we've already started a recession, and people just don't want to call it a recession yet. And I think it's just a matter of how bad of a recession is going to be and how long of a recession it's going to be. So 2023 is definitely going to be a recession year. and things will be drastically different from 2022, and way different from 2021. So you need to be adjusting your business accordingly. And we've talked about that in a lot of different on your channel, my channel. Focusing on more cheaper casher cars, economy cars, the newer vehicles. I'm always going to be buying newer vehicles because that's what I like to do. I love like being ahead of the game and having new vehicles that nobody else can really get a hold of. And so that's one of the biggest reasons I talked about the Maverick and the Pear, because those are lower priced new vehicles that are super efficient. And those are the kind of vehicles that will just hold their value extremely well through a recession. And Mavericks, Pears, those are just great vehicles. And that's why I was targeting them, the beginning of this year. And I'm glad you guys are on board with that too. I think you're going to be super happy with that. Super safe vehicles. And that's the kind of stuff that you want. Vehicles that, are going to be safe vehicles during a recession that as money gets tight, what kind of vehicles are people going to be want to driving and want to own?
Yeah, I'm excited to see that Fisker Pear vehicle once we are able to get our hands on it.
Yeah, I want to see the vehicle whole. We've seen a lot of good pictures on it, a lot of good information about it. But yeah, I definitely would like to see a full walk around of that car inside and out. I think it's going to be a unique, special vehicle. I'm hoping they can keep the pricing where they've talked about it. And if so, then it's going to be a great thing.
You mentioned this earlier, but with the Fed continuing to hike interest rate and no end in sight, how do you think rates affect the Turo market?
Well, they're already affecting the Turo market, and they're affecting the values of vehicles. So obviously, you've seen the more expensive cars are dropping in price quicker. It wasn't that long ago where G wagons were going for $100,000 over MSRP, and that's done in a hurry. Even like the cars like the C8s, they were up until just a few months ago. They were still $20,000-$30,000 over MSRP. You can buy a C8 right now at many dealerships within driving distance from you for MSRP right now. And if you can't in December, you definitely will be able to in January and February. And that's because of the rates. Just less people are able to purchase the higher end vehicles, the more expensive cars, because high interest rates, they don't affect the small loans as much as they affect the big loans. It's just like a house. As far as that goes. So as far as rates, the good news is I think there is an end in sight. The last increase was 0.5 basis points, half a point basically. And that means most likely the next one will probably be a 0.25 increase, and then we'll probably stop. Maybe they do another 0.5, but I don't think they will. I think they're going to level off, and then they're gonna sit there for a little while. So as far as interest rates, even if we just calculate the latest 0.5 rate, even the credit unions, the lowest rates you can get right now is going to be in the high fours across the board. Most of the banks are all at their lowest rates. Tier 1, even like a buy rate is going to be in the fives, mid fives, or high fives, somewhere between 4.9 and 5.99 is about the lowest you can get out there right now. And that makes things a little more difficult, if you like the newer, nicer cars like I do. So you have to be very diligent on which individual vehicles you want to target, and make sure that's the right one to purchase as far as that goes. So when you go to dealerships, they're going to have, even if you're tier 1 and tier 2 credit, most dealerships are going to give you a rate of 7-8% is basically what you're going to get. Now, there is a couple of workarounds on that. If you need to purchase a vehicle or two in the future, Capital One has an auto navigator where you can get pre-approved and for a specific rate. And when you go to the dealership is not allowed to mark that rate up on the Capital One navigator. And so they're not going to want to use it. So they'll either have to give you that rate that you already have ahead of time, or they'll have to try to get something a little bit better, and that's okay too. Chase is also doing the same thing. So Chase is another one that they have a similar tool where you can get pre-approved, and when you go to the dealership, they can't mark up that rate. Those are the two banks that do that. Of course, you can always get pre-approved at a credit union and walk in with a pre-approval. That's always been a good strategy as far as that goes. And then if the dealership can try to get a little bit better than that, that's great. But if you're going to be buying a lot of cars, you don't want the dealership sending your credit out to a bunch of different banks. So I always tell them, like, look, this is the approval I have. I'll give you up to 2 banks. If you think there's 1 or 2 banks that can compete with this, I'm okay with that. But the limited amounts of credit pulls, be very specific on what permission you give them as far as that goes. So as far as the Turo business, you just have to be a little bit more diligent. I'll still target some high-end vehicles. I have another Corvette, the E-Ray, that I still want to buy. I'm probably not going to buy the Hummer the interest rates and recession worries have kind of like changed my strategy and my decision making on that. But I still would like that Corvette, which is going to be an expensive car. So the way to do that is you want to be trading in a car on that vehicle with a lot of equity. So I have cars that I have, $20,000-$30,000 in equity, and that's the kind of vehicle you want to trade in on a vehicle like that. So you already have a massive amount of basically the down payment on the car, and then throw some extra cash on that. And that's the way you can get a specific vehicle that is a good vehicle that's going to do well, that's not going to depreciate. There's only certain vehicles like that. And then still try to pay the minimum amount of interest as possible. But you have to be able to run the numbers. There's going to be a lot of Turo hosts that they don't calculate the cost of interest, and when interest is 2 and 3%, it's very minimal what you were able to pay on that. But when interest rates are 7 or 8%, I mean, it's going to eat out a lot of chunk of your profit.
And all that being said, which host do you believe will be in trouble, and which do you think will do well?
Yeah, this is a good question. I think it's a very simple question. Those hosts that are over leveraged are going to struggle, and they're going to be in trouble. You got hosts that there's a lot of gurus out there that teach you how to buy 10 cars in 1 week, and get hacked, and that can be done. But most of the time, a lot of people that are doing that, they don't have the experience to line up with that. So if you're over leveraged, if you have a lot of higher interest loans, and you're trying to run the Turo business in 2023, you're going to be in trouble. And if you're already in that position, you better start unloading some of your vehicles, the highest interest loans that you have, the vehicles that are not, and try to start unloading them now, because you're going to get buried next year. The values are going to be dropping substantially. While you're trying to panicking and trying to lower your prices to keep your bookings up, which is putting more miles on your car, and it's a vicious cycle. So your car is depreciating quickly, you got a high interest loan, and you're trying to scramble keep this business that was great a year ago. Those people are going to get hurt and get in trouble. Now, the hosts that are going to do the best are hosts that aren't leveraged, that are very low leverage. You guys want a great cash business. You just add cars as cars get as you have the cash to buy a car. And you really can't get in trouble with that, because you always have, you're able to grow it. I think the very best hosts are those that are going to have small cash fleets that are paid for, and then a handful of financed vehicles, specific vehicles, targeting vehicles. And that allows you to build good chunks of equity in those vehicles and trade them in on specific vehicles in the future. So I think the best hosts will be those that have many paid off cars, like 50% at least, and then a small handful of financed cars that they have for as low rates as possible, of really smart decisions for the climate of the Turo business. And those hosts, I think, are going to do really, really well.
And as someone who's always thinking ahead, do you have any new strategies that you plan on executing for the next 2 years?
I like this question, because I do. I have 2 videos I'll be doing. I don't know when. It'll be probably February, March. And basically, I think there's a really great strategy that only about 1% of Turo hosts utilize at this time. And it's the strategy of purchasing a car without the intention to just rent it as much as possible. Let me give you an example. I have a host in my area that he has his niche of cars, is it's Audi RS models. And if you're not familiar with the Audi RS models, these are Audi's ultra high performance line, and it's the equivalent of a BMW M3 M series. They're high end, but the Audis are actually a little bit, typically they're a little bit more powerful. They're all-wheel drive, and they're a little bit more rare than the M series because Audi makes a lot less of them. And so he has a fleet. He has probably 4 or 5 of these Audi RS vehicles, different years, different models. One's like 10 years old, one's 5, 6 years old, but they're very niche vehicles in that the people that rent them, they really want that Audi RS. It's not they're just looking for a luxury car to rent or an Audi to rent. And so he's able to keep his prices very, very high, and that's the goal. The goal is to, he has a vehicle that's maybe 9, 10 years old, right? And he's charging $250 a day for the vehicle. And he's not trying to rent the vehicle very much. But this strategy is going to come into effect during the recession for people who have the resources to buy certain vehicles. And I'm going to do a video on basically 10 different vehicles that I'm targeting during the recession. So over the next 2 years, these are vehicles that, the last 2 years, it was very difficult to buy performance-oriented vehicles because everybody had lots of cash and the prices on them were extremely, extremely expensive. Going into recession, performance-oriented cars, specialty, lower volume cars, the cost of them are going to come down, very substantially because people don't have the extra cash and to buy the fun things in life, so to speak. So there's a whole list of vehicles that, as we're going into electric only, a lot of manufacturers are going all EV, all EV, all V. You're going to have these muscle cars, these V8s, these sports cars, that manual vehicles. There's a whole list of that style of vehicle that basically is going to be extinct very soon. And so for certain hosts who have a little bit of extra space and they like cars, they're going to be able to buy some of these performance-oriented cars at bargain values compared to the last 2 or 3 years. And these are cars that are really never going to go, are never going to depreciate. They're only going to go up in value. And this is where you're basically mixing a Turo host investing in just cars that really are going to only go up in value. And the purpose is not to rent the cars very much, but just to rent them a couple times a month, maybe at most. And if the car never goes down in value, then that's all profit, whatever you bring in. And so hopefully that makes sense. I'll explain it more in detail but I'm really excited. Both these videos will be the videos I'm most excited about recording. One is a list of the cars that I want to be targeting over the next 2-3 years in the recession. And the other is how I want to use those cars and make it profitable and also fun and collectible and so forth.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the slow seasons. Almost all markets across the US experience a slowdown at some point or another throughout the year. What recommendations do you have for a slowdown?
Good question. For most hosts, it typically is right after the holidays. So after Christmas, you're going to have January and February is typically the most, start of the slow season, so to speak, at least in my area. I mean, there may be certain areas in Florida or, maybe that's not the case for, but we're coming up on a slow season. Whenever I'm going into a slow season, there's a few things I want to do. One, I want to look at possibly selling off some of my fleet. So I'm not carrying a bunch of extra cars that are not going to rent. Any cars that I feel like I need to get rid of. If it's cash cars, it's cars that, I know that the brakes should be coming up fairly soon, or there's certain things that I know are on the horizon, a timing belt or that kind of stuff. So those are the kind of cars I may try to unload just before the slow season starts. And then I'll buy something different. As far as that goes, once the beginning of this hot season starts up. Next is I want to do a full all of my vehicles in that slow season. I want to take the time to really do a deep dive in the mechanical condition of the vehicles. We all have our own checking things out, checking tires, that kind of stuff. But if we're honest, a lot of times when it's busy and we're just going renter to renter to renter, we're not doing a deep dive into these cars. And that's where you really want to get, check the tires and check the brakes and get all your mechanical stuff done. Topping off your fluids. So just some little things like I like to rain X by the windows during the slow season and make sure that, if you have a wiper blade that a host has that is damaged or whatever, if you got a good set of Rain-X on the windshields, they almost don't even need wipers at a certain point. And so that stuff can really help your, help not to have negative reviews if something happens during the wiper as far as that goes. Little things like that, topping off your fluids, checking your brakes and tires and all that kind of stuff. You really want to make sure that as soon as the slow season's finished, all your cars in really peak condition as far as oil changes and maintenance and tires and brakes and all of that to where you're ready to roll.
No, it's a great idea and good suggestion to optimize during that slowdown. I have one last bonus question, and it's unrelated to all things car sharing. This is a question that James wanted to throw in here, actually. What do you think about Bitcoin and any price predictions on that?
Yeah, I like this. I like this. I like bonus questions, and I'll talk about Bitcoin, just like Turo. That's another exciting topic for me. Bitcoin. I like Bitcoin. I like the price where it's at right now. It's I looked at just recently. It's back up to 18,000. Which, if you think about this FTX and SBF collapse and all of that, you would have thought that Bitcoin would have gotten hit a lot harder, right? I mean, it went from like 20,000 down to about 15,000. Now it's back up to 18, 19,000. So I think Bitcoin has shown incredible stability in this year where even stocks are getting hammered. You got big stocks like Meta and Tesla's getting the most recent one getting hammered, and Bitcoin is really pretty stable right now. And I think that shows how strong Bitcoin is. When you see these other coins and different companies and different things, going under, and I think there'll be some, ups and downs. I really thought that Bitcoin would drop down to that 12,000 range. When this whole collapse went down, I thought that's where we were going. I don't think we really went under 15,000. And if you don't have, Bitcoin in your portfolio, you got to be careful, giving people information because people will just kind of run with something. But I think every type of, as you're using the Turo business and building profit and so forth, it is a great idea to throw in about 5%, 5 to 10% of, what of cash that you have to invest into Bitcoin. And maybe even Ethereum a little bit. Those two are kind of the ones that are standing the test of time, actually be something that's going to hold value long term. There's a lot of other altcoins too that potentially will, but there's a lot more question marks as far as that goes. But I want to allocate around 10%, something where if I lost all of that, it's not going to take me under. But I definitely want to have a portion in that. And this is a good time to slowly dollar cost average into Bitcoin. The easiest way to do this, if you don't want to try to study like the ups and downs and when to buy, is just set up something recurring where it's $50 a week or $100 a month, and it just buys every time you get paid or you get your direct deposit, and you can slowly accumulating a nice little a cushion there for you. Because the bottom line is, very likely could be a year, could be 2 years, we don't know when. Bitcoin will go on another run and it'll break through 100,000. And then who knows how high it will go as far as that goes. I see I think it's realistic where over the next 5 to 10 years that Bitcoin could go up as far as, 250,000. And if that's the case, if you have a small portion of that, that can be very beneficial. We don't know. There's a lot of question marks of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's only been around. It's never really been in a high interest environment and a more, there's some questions. So we'll see. But I think that could be beneficial for Bitcoin. And that's why we haven't seen it crash even lower.
No, I agree. And that's kind of the approach that I take too, is I just do the reoccurring purchase, and been doing that for quite a while with try not to look at it too much.
Yeah, it's super. Yeah, that's the best way to do it. You just set it up or whatever you know decide you want to do, and just let it do its thing. Don't worry about it, and then you can look at it when you see that on the news that everybody else is talking about it. Then go back and check and see what you have, because that's when you'll be happy.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, thank you, Andrew. That's all the questions that I have. I really appreciate you again taking the time to sit down with us and all of the value input that you continue to give us. All the questions that you answer when we shoot a message over to you. Really appreciate all the support that you give and all the insights that you share on your channel.
Yeah, guys, winning strategies for Turo. Check it out. We got some new graphics that we did. We got some great videos planned in the future here. Been a little slacking lately, but we're gonna get back on the horse.
No, sounds like you have a lot of good stuff coming out. Looking forward to seeing it.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you again. Take care. Have a good one.